a batch of vials labeled smallpox was uncovered in a lab right here in Montgomery County. And now CDC investigators are in town trying to figure out if they contain that deadly virus. Wednesday night, the big story on Action News is this potentially dangerous discovery.
A lab employee at Merck in Upper Gwinnett Township spotted the vials while cleaning a freezer. Action News reporter Annie McCormick live from there tonight with the details. Annie.
Yeah, Rick and Shari, that's right. The CDC was expected to arrive here at some point today to take those vials and bring them to a different laboratory to test them. The Pennsylvania Department of Health late today getting back to me saying that there is no threat to the public and nobody was exposed. Now under investigation, the discovery of what the CDC are calling questionable vials labeled smallpox found in a freezer Monday evening at the Merck facility in Upper Gwinnett Township, Montgomery County. All of the vials were intact. The person who made the discovery was wearing protective gear. Health officials say an alert went out to the Department of Homeland Security. Upper Gwinnett Township Police received a notification Tuesday morning and were told the FBI is investigating. According to Montgomery County officials, the Pennsylvania Department of Health alerted them, stating, quote, there were reportedly a total of 15 questionable vials, and 5 of the vials were labeled as smallpox and 10 were labeled as vaccinia.
Frankly, I'm surprised that this would happen someplace like Merck. All of the vials of smallpox that were out in virologist freezers were supposed to be disposed of once the disease was considered eradicated. But
Dr. Teresa Sweet of Drexel University School of Public Health said since smallpox was eradicated in 1980, there are only 2 places in the world where the virus is stored, at the CDC in Atlanta and in Russia at their public health center.
Merck at least was very open about this, right? They admitted that they found these vials. They contacted the CDC and the CDC is investigating. So hopefully the transparency coming from both Merck and the CDC will help alleviate people's fears that there are just vials of smallpox all over, which I don't think there are.
And Rick, the big question still is, how did they get there? Well, Dr. Sweet surmises that they may have been left behind. A number of freezers that large pharmaceutical companies use are very large and also
tracks on some YouTubers or some shit.
The Centers for Disease Control announced a startling discovery: long-forgotten vials of smallpox, one of the deadliest and most feared diseases in history. It was thought to be wiped out, but there it was in a cardboard box in a storage room just outside Washington, D.C.
We also face a new threat that the next epidemic has a good chance of originating on a computer screen of a terrorist intent on using genetic engineering to create a synthetic version of the smallpox virus.
Vials labeled smallpox found in a lab in Montgomery County.
Sang on my track, I bet.
Deadly. Only 2 labs in the entire world are allowed to have doses. Those vials were found at a Merck facility in Upper Gwinnett Township, Montgomery County, where vaccine research is conducted.
Say, okay, what if a bioterrorist brought smallpox to 10 airports? You know, how would the world respond to that?
A truck hauling 100 monkeys collided with a dump truck outside Danville, and 3 of the monkeys got out. They arrived in the U.S. from Mauritius, a country in Eastern Africa. They were being from New York City to a CDC-approved quarantine facility. The 3 that escaped posed a health risk to the public, CDC officials told us today. Macaques can pass deadly viruses to humans.
This morning, a Massachusetts man is in isolation after being diagnosed with the first case of monkeypox in the U.S. this year. Dr. Chin Hong says monkeypox can spread through the sharing of any bodily fluid.
It behooves us all to think about a pandemic response.
It could be that individuals are not as immune to monkeypox as they once were as a result of smallpox vaccination. That's why we see the ordering of the vaccine.
You know, we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, you know, I'd say is will get attention this time.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Washington.
And I'm Scott Schaefer. We begin with breaking news. 4 monkeys are on the loose tonight in central Pennsylvania.
Yes, we said monkeys. Let's go right to Newswatch 16's Nikki Kries. She is live near Danville tonight to tell us what is going on. Nikki.
Well, Lisa and Scott, according to state police, a truck carrying around 100 monkeys collided with a tractor trailer late this afternoon here on Route 54, just off of the on-ramp of Interstate 80 near Danville. And troopers confirmed to us tonight 4 of the monkeys got free. They are now believed to be on the loose somewhere in the Danville area. State police and the State Game Commission are actively searching for the primates at this hour. They're even using a helicopter. Again, the search is on for those 4 monkeys here in the Danville area. That crash happened here along Route 54 around 3:30 this afternoon. We will keep you updated here on Newswatch 16 and at WNEP.com. Nikki Kries, Newswatch 16, live.
An update now to a story from central Pennsylvania. This one involves monkeys on the loose after a crash. We're not making this up. There were 100 monkeys on a truck that crashed. 4 of those monkeys got loose, according to police. And this morning, all but 1 of the monkeys have been located. Officials say no one should attempt to look for or capture the animal. The crash happening in Danville, Montour County along Route 54 just last night.
Smallpox eradication was one of the greatest accomplishments of the human race.
I'm sure there are literally billions of lives that have been saved as a result.
Good news from Geneva. The World Health Organization has made it official. Smallpox throughout the world has been virtually eliminated.
After eradication was declared in 1980, there were still samples of variola virus around the world. One accident, one confirmed case is a pandemic. Smallpox was still a threat.
Hospitals all over the world had blood samples and samples of scabs from people with smallpox that were collected during the course of ordinary smallpox outbreaks. But all this material was infectious.
At that point in time, the decision was to ask countries to voluntarily identify any potential stocks or materials they had and to consolidate them.
The compromise that was worked out is that the virus would be kept in 2 places.
One would be the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's highest security lab in Atlanta, and the other would be the Ivanovsky Institute in central Moscow.
By shipping them to those 2 centers, the idea was to do some sequencing of the virus, learn as much as we could about it, and then destroy it. That was the intent.
That was the deal, that they were going to actually destroy the virus at the end of it. But that didn't happen.
Dr. Josh Lederberg, a Nobel laureate, once said, eventually the viruses will win. But actually, in the case of smallpox, I think we, the human race, won, maybe. We defeated Mother Nature. But now the question is, will a terrorist organization or a nation state cause us to have to face smallpox again?
This virus has been eradicated from the human population, so it doesn't exist, except in 2 labs, in Russia and in the United States.
The risk of re-emergence of smallpox has changed significantly.
We believe the WHO should reconsider this agenda item in 5 years or whenever research goals...
After smallpox eradication, there was general accord that it should be destroyed.
Everybody was fine with that in the early 90s. But then the concerns about its use as a weapon became more and more highlighted.
In the 1990s, as the Soviet Union fell, several scientists defected and started telling the Brits and us of secret weapons programs using various viruses and organisms that have been going on since the 1970s.
Now, a defector named Ken Alibek brought with him evidence that the Soviet Union had laboratories scattered from St. Petersburg all the way out to Siberia.
Ken Alibek was a Kazakhstani. He was the deputy director of Biopreparat, the offensive biologic weapons program in the Soviet Union.
Where not only were researchers developing biological weapons out of smallpox and other dangerous organisms, but perhaps more importantly, they were developing weapons systems for the delivery of viruses to human populations.
40,000 scientists and engineers making bioweapons.
They had stockpiled up to 20 liquid tons of weapons-grade smallpox in huge tanks.
They were focused on biological weapons that would have the greatest potential to cause harm to their enemies, and they saw smallpox as being on the top of that list.
Bill Clinton started looking at the bio threat in the late 90s and the details of what Ken Alibek and the other defectors said, and he got very concerned.
And what came out of that was the thought that the U.S. is just not ready to declare the stocks valueless. So the U.S. government took it to the World Health Organization and said, we would like to pull virus back out of the freezer and do the following types of studies.
The work was largely oriented around getting new vaccines and new antivirals.
In 1999, at the World Health Assembly, the United States put forward a resolution asking for a delay in the destruction of the smallpox stocks. And then 9/11 happened, and the anthrax attacks in the United States.
From Australia to Asia to the Americas, fear over anthrax has gone global.
This war on terrorism is going to continue for an indefinite period of time.
The arguments became much easier to retain the virus because everybody was afraid.
We were not paying much attention about smallpox. I was not in government at that point. And the Sunday after the attack, I was called to meet with the Secretary of Health because it wasn't clear where we stood on stocks of smallpox vaccine. Somebody had the idea, I think, that there was maybe as much as 20 million doses. Turned out the figure was 90,000. 90,000 doses of smallpox vaccine for the country.
D.A. Henderson went down to the White House and went around Washington, and he basically twisted a whole lot of arms and got a whole lot of money.
We went full steam ahead, and by 18 months, we had 220 million doses.
The end result, quite quickly, was a national stockpile of smallpox vaccine so that every person in the United States could be vaccinated in the event of a national or global smallpox emergency.
We have enough doses of the smallpox vaccine, but people need to be aware that the prospect of using this virus as a biological weapon hasn't dimmed at all.